bring that child in.
Have you specifically, like I know that Jehovah's Witnesses do not receive blood products. How do they feel about receiving insulin injections?
They're okay with insulin.
Okay.
There's a verse in the Bible about not drinking an animal's blood. And so then that's taken literally. So anything that comes from the blood, so that would be, again, plasma cells, then they would not want that. So I've only encountered Jehovah's Witness before in the ICU, and then there was one, the wife had been in a car accident, and she was a member of the church where you don't do any medical intervention. And the husband was furious. He wanted all this stuff taken off of her and wanted to go home. Well, we can't do that. So that was a huge crisis because he was so unhappy. Because, he felt like he was sinning and that his wife was not going to go to heaven should she die because she was not following God's will, which was no medical intervention, faith only.
My stepdaughter was dating a kid that his family believed in that, and she's wanting to go to school to be a doctor, and he broke up with her because of it. She's 17, but it was like a really weird deal.
Yeah, so you may encounter folks like that. They've done some great things with the blood product things for Jehovah's Witnesses and others who may not want blood products, and they're coming up with synthetic bloods that will do the same functions in an emergency. All right, again, ketoacidosis is going to cause metabolic acidosis, and then they're going to do the rapid breathing that's called Kussmaul's. All right, now, this actually is not a good place for that. I need to move that. Let's move the next one too. I just realized normally I had these moved, but I see that I didn't. Right there. That's where it needs to go. Okay. Now, it used to be thought that diabetics always lost their kidneys because of high blood sugar. But then they found there were people who were able to carefully maintain a normal blood sugar and still wound up with kidney failure. And it turns out there's insulin receptors on the kidney filters. And then the kidney filters break down just with the disease of diabetes. And so these are the filters that are in the kidney. There's a capillary, there's a red blood cell. Shows you how fine these filters are. These break down. And then you wind up with protein in the urine as a result. And then the kidney function decreases. Okay, I'm going to skip around just a little bit. So I'm going to go to type 2 diabetes. All right, type 2 diabetes. Now that we've talked about what happens in type 1, there are some similarities in terms of high blood sugar. Again, the difference is this is multi-gene, slow to develop, increased by obesity. And this is, the cells are not susceptible to insulin. They no longer bind to insulin. So blood sugar stays high because of that. All right, now let's go for a stereotype. And again, this is just the stereotype. Not all people who follow this pattern, nor all people who are obese follow this pattern. I'm just going with the obesity or the type 2 diabetes stereotype. So here you have somebody who's eating all the time. So this is someone who's eating. Blood sugar is high all the time. Insulin is being released all the time. Our body is all about supply and demand, but enough is enough. And we talked about this with drug addicts because there's so much insulin all the time, the receptors to insulin are removed. They're downregulated. So the protein receptor is removed from the plasma membrane. So then the cell no longer responds to insulin. So now blood sugar stays high. So again, thinking about our stereotypes, differences, type 1 diabetic is a child who is skinny. Type 2 diabetic is a middle-aged adult who is fat. And I'm fat, so I'm okay with the word fat. If you yourself are fat and don't like the word fat, pleasingly fine. Charmingly chubby. Now this one, all we have to do is get those receptors back into the plasma membrane. So if we shrink the visceral adipocytes, that's one way, so that's diet, reducing calories. And then exercise helps in two ways. Exercise helps use the fat, shrink these adipocytes, and exercise puts the receptors for glucose into the skeletal muscles directly. So then both are putting the insulin receptors back in place. So glucose levels will go down. So the disease process will reverse so long as they are losing weight and exercising.
I don't know how the GLUT4s come off in the first place.
They are typically just recycled by the cell. So lysosomes would destroy them. They're being brought in as little vesicles, and the lysosome eats it, and then it's gone. And then we have the amino acids. Now they're free, and the amino acids can build something else. I wonder if I can find that real quick. There's gotta be alcohol out there, don't you think?
I know, that's what it sounds like.
Open. Oh, good, it's not working. Chapter 6 had a figure. That had vesicles that have the GLUT4 transporters in them, plasma membrane. And so what insulin's doing is moving these vesicles to the plasma membrane so that then we get the GLUT4 transporters here. Well, by the same token, we could just pinch that off, bring it back inside and digest it.
But if they eat a lot and they're overweight, then they use all of them, and then they
Well,
just don't come back.
No, the receptors are deliberately removed because there's too much insulin response. It's like the body goes, "Whoa, okay, way too much insulin,
We don't
just
need
like
that many receptors.
way too much dopamine with the cocaine user,
Okay, that
way too many receptors. Let's just get rid of a bunch of these because we're getting way too much insulin response." Which, again, this is pathophysiology. It doesn't make sense. It's not homeostatic.
yeah.
We're removing the very thing we need.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
I just that little part didn't put log up.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, now you open. After I do all my drawings, I can open all the way now. No, all right, well, I'm just gonna keep going then. All right, metabolic syndrome. So someone with type 2 diabetes has increased heart disease. That's the take home, that's the big picture. So, type 2 diabetes, hardening of the arteries, high blood pressure, central obesity. I am apple-shaped, so my fat is predominantly abdominal, but the American Heart Association says it doesn't matter, fat's fat. It's just there are more visceral adipocytes in the case of the people who are apple-shaped. Elevated blood pressure, elevated glucose, elevated triglycerides, and low, good cholesterol. HDL-C, its job is to carry cholesterol to the liver for processing. So that's why it's called the good cholesterol. You want high HDLs. LDL keeps the cholesterol in the blood so that it sticks to the arteries as a result. So that's why HDL is a good thing. There's something else I was going to say about your nutrition class, but now it's gone. That's great. All right, so for treating type 2 diabetics, this is from another book. The primary one they rely on first is metformin. And what metformin's doing is it's stopping gluconeogenesis. But there are other drugs that the type 2 diabetic can take. All right, now why do we care? This is what you're going to see, either type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes. Here's going to be the major cause of kidney failure, the major cause of limb amputation, the major cause of stroke and heart disease, and the second leading cause of blindness. Who am I gonna ask? Because I know the answer.
One.
No.
Accidents.
What's the leading cause of blindness? Macular degeneration. Oh. All right, now I'll answer the one. Why? The high blood sugar destroys the lining of the capillaries. So we destroy the lining of the capillaries, then we have inappropriate constriction of blood vessels, which decreases blood flow and therefore oxygen to the tissues distal. Big blood vessels, that means we're going to increase stroke and heart disease. Small blood vessels, we increase kidney disease, the nerves die, and the retina die. Okay. Questions? Any of that? I see that's the perfect lead-in for Mr. McBride.